Before Final Fantasy, there was Dragon Quest, and before Dragon Quest VIII, it's the best one. The best one! There was the original Dragon Quest on the NES, remade for the Game Boy Color later on. The first Dragon Quest is, ironically, the shortest of the series, hypothetically speaking, of course. The Dragon Lord, Draco Lord in the Game Boy Color version, has stolen the Ball of Light and plunged the world into darkness, ending its era of peace.
O hero, descendant of the Great Lotto, please save us from certain disaster and fight the evil Draco Lord and save us. If you do, I'll let you bang my daughter, but you have to find her first, 'cause she got kidnapped by a dragon. Help! Oh God, help! What?
Armor?
What am I, a fucking charity?
There you go, those are your instructions. You got some pocket change, the torch, the key, buy your own weapons, and do whatever it is you gotta do. Dragon Quest was infamous for not telling you a single thing without making you put an effort into finding out. That whole procedure every RPG player does where they talk to everyone in town for information, that was invented here because it's the only way to know where and what to do without looking up a walkthrough, and even then instructions are never clear. But that was the intent back then. The idea was for you to get lost and explore and then slowly piece together what it is you had to do to beat the game. Or buy the strategy guide for $20.
Macro transactions.
You'd eventually come across an unfamiliar piece of terrain and discover an ancient tomb dedicated to your ancestor, and on his grave, more instructions that sort of leave you with more questions than answers, but pushing you forward nonetheless. This is why the grinding in Dragon Quest made sense in context. By the time you were done figuring out what you had to do was on a different continent, you were already super ripped from fighting the monsters in the area and were ready for the stronger enemies over the bridge. The formula wasn't perfect, otherwise we wouldn't have remembered grinding as a problem, and assuming you wanted to play through the game a second time or follow a walkthrough, you would have been severely underleveled against all the bosses when you got to them. Shit, Dragon Lord is still a pain in the ass even if you do grind for a few hours. But he can't win against save states! I was surprised to find that there weren't many staples of the franchise in the first Dragon Quest. Countless enemy designs, music, tiles of pain, weapons that double as usable items in battle are all there, but it's also missing a lot of key things like a bank, and party members, a casino, needing a boat, becoming a giant bird. Oh, and that whole gaining experience points, buying equipment for your character, random battles, you know, stuff that you would expect any turn-based RPG to have. Yeah, this helped make that famous. If you've played an RPG, this game probably did a lot of favors for it. There's also really clever game design I didn't expect to see. Showing you that you can walk around city limits or directing you in dungeons with pictures on the ground, they use a lot of those cues in this game, and it was simple, but very cool when you realized that's what they were doing. Dare I say it, it's goddamn impressive. Which is why they made the sequel. Dragon Quest II was literally a bigger version of Dragon Quest I. The same world, but bigger. The same battles, but bigger. The same massages, but bigger? Bigger soundtracks, bigger towns, bigger dungeons, and a much bigger campaign.
Please forgive me, Your Highness. Please forgive the feelings of a woman not worthy of you.
Felicia, no matter how far apart we are, you will always be in my heart. I will cherish our time together, and perhaps when I've proven myself, I can finally say that I am worthy to love you.
Son! Son! Where's that lousy son of a bitch? Oh! There you are. Some guy named Hargood's killed that king for that kingdom. You know the one. I need you to go kick his ass for me since you're descended from the Great Lotto or whatever. Take this sword and go save the world. An armed guard? What am I, a fucking charity? Get your cousins to help you. I don't care if one of them's been turned into a dog.
It's a small gesture, but that copper sword at the very start of the game sets the right expectation going from the first Dragon Quest to this one. You're going to need this. The combat in Dragon Quest II was more involved than its predecessor. Status ailments were introduced in full force, there were more enemies per battle that showed up in groups that could be targeted with new spells and attacks, and to fight them, a team of heroes, each with their own skill set, and it managed to keep battles just as short as they were in the first game, which is basically mathematically impossible. This was when Dragon Quest really started to gain an identity as well. Slimes have been around since day one, but long-lasting members of the monster family made their debut in Dragon Quest II. Churches became a place to revive dead party members, slot machines could be used to gain special items, and of course, naval travel became a pivotal transition in gameplay. The first few hours of Dragon Quest II play like the first one. You walk across the land, going town to town, trying to find the things you need to move forward. But once you've got your party assembled and think, now all I've got to do is fight the final boss, you hop on a boat, and the actual game you're supposed to be playing opens up to you. And much like that clingy girlfriend from high school, it opens up maybe a little too much. People like to cringe at how crazy Dragon Quest I was with figuring things out. Dragon Quest II dumps you in an ocean and says, hey, in this big-ass world, we've hidden 5 things you need to find to get to the final boss, and we ain't saying shit.
Good luck.
This is an important transition that, to my knowledge, occurs in almost every Dragon Quest game and just about every other RPG you can think of, but it's especially important here because this is when Dragon Quest stops giving a shit about how you live your life. It wipes its hands clean and leaves you to figure things out for yourself. In essence, this is when a Dragon Quest game actually starts. I like to call the length of time it takes to get to this point, time to boat. Dragon Quest II, according to my playtime, has a time to boat of about 4 hours and 20 minutes, don't say it. Dragon Quest II adds a lot to what the first game offered, and something you'll notice is you said it, didn't you? What you'll notice in the following weeks is every Dragon Quest tries to be different from the last, and that is the smoothest way I've ever announced a video series. They all try to be a little different or a little more than their predecessor. Speaking of which, I'm sure some of you are already asking, why aren't I playing the original NES versions of these games? Because they're the inferior version. The original Dragon Quest had a horrible interface and the combat was balanced in such a way that it took ages to grind levels. Grinding slimes could kill you in that game. I repeat, grinding slimes could kill you in that game. It looked worse, it played worse, I liked the music better, but that's because I'm so used to hearing the Game Boy sound chip that the NES sound chip sounded refreshing to me. The only thing the NES releases of these games did better was the field of view, and that's because the Game Boy had a lower resolution and they didn't bother making the sprites smaller to compensate. If anything, the remakes are the only reason these two games still hold up. And I do know that certain features were added into the remakes based off of later Dragon Quest titles. I'm not counting those things among the reasons why. Part of me hopes that the last boss of 2 is easier to beat in the original version though, because it was a nightmare to beat that guy. Now I can talk about Dragon Quest III. But before I do that, there's something I have to do. Hey guys, thanks for watching my episode on Dragon Quest 1 and 2. I want to apologize right off the bat on this one because originally this was going to be an episode on 1, 2, and 3, but it was taking too long and I wasn't satisfied with what I had said about Dragon Quest 3, so it eventually just started to become its own separate thing. That being said, I think I'm gonna keep most of the videos in this series around this length, but that's mostly because despite having differences here and there, the Dragon Quest games are mostly the same. I'd be retreading a lot of ground if I did a 13-minute, 15-minute video like I usually do for these things. And yeah, we're gonna do a Dragon Quest series. We're gonna be going through all the mainline titles, except maybe the MMO. We're doing most of the spin-offs. I'm gonna try to do all of them if I can find them all. and if I can get them all to work. This is intended as a countdown to Dragon Quest XI, but there's no deadline. We're not doing none of that. I am going to be doing other stuff in the in-between. I just thought it would be a cool idea to go through all the Dragon Quest games with you guys and just lose my mind over how cool they are while you stare at me like I am a crazy person. Anyway, I've hijacked this end card long enough. Do the thing, tell your friends. My name's GC. Remember that you are amazing, and keep on playing positive. See you next time, guys.